Hey, everybody out there. Linda Bean from the Kellyanne Dolan Memorial Fund. Thank you for joining us today on Shining a Light. You often hear me talk about the small businesses being the lifeline behind the scenes of the Dolan Fund in the way that they support us in kind and financially and help our families out. So you can imagine when I come across a small business in the community that aligns with our mission and is out there really killing it in terms of lifting the spirits and lightening the burdens, especially of someone that's living with a disability. We know that 15% of the world population is living with some kind of disability, some severe, some functional. When we break it down to autism as a disability, we know that 1 in 54 children, according to the CDC, is living on the autism spectrum. And boys statistically have a much higher chance of getting it than girls. And that comes up to 5.4 million people in the world living with autism. So I'm delighted to welcome Kelly Weiss. Sorry, Kelly.
That's okay.
Yep.
Hey.
Hey, Kelly, how you doing?
I'm doing.
All right, we're doing, what I love, Kelly is one of the owners of the Perkiomen Valley Brewery, and you just kind of stumbled across this gem of a business in so many ways. You're saying it all with your shirt, inclusion. So I would love to hear a little bit of the backstory of the Perkiomen Valley Brewery and really what the heartbeat is.
So the backstory goes probably back. It's like marrying two different things. So Tom and I have been together since high school, and I was the person who would show up to the kegger parties with craft beer because I even liked it back then. And that's going back to the 80s where you had to dig for it a little bit more. And life took us on a really scenic journey, and Tom was in the Navy. So we had that stint, and then we're out of the Navy, and then we have children, and it quickly became apparent that Noah and Jonah were both diagnosed with autism. So very early on, and how autism affects them is pretty substantially in multiple ways. And in addition, Noah, who is in that gold shirt in the back, he also has dyspraxia, which basically means he had to learn how to make almost every single motor movement that he makes, including speech. So interestingly, they were both reading at 3, but as far as verbal communication and really functional communication, meaning back and forth and getting more fluent, really was a journey for us. And because of that and other factors with their fine motor and their gross motor, it became pretty apparent to us pretty early on that we were going to have many challenges to have to work through and to learn about. I always say to people, to me, learning about autism was like, because you go into parenting, you think you know what you're going to be, and then our trajectory was really fundamentally changed, and we had a lot of learning to do. So it was like having a rocket attached to you, and you didn't know where you were going, and it was foggy, and you didn't know where you were going to land. All you knew is that you were all in. You were going to fight like hell to figure it out because your kids needed you to do it. And ever since then, Noah and Jonah have been like our North Star for our family, but they taught us so much about just being, seeing the world differently, right? And seeing people on the entire human spectrum differently and approaching it from a much different place than we did had they not been in our lives. And then out of the blue, Tom laid on me one time in his 40s that he wanted to have a brewery. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it is the only time my husband ever like he wasn't kidding, and I knew he wasn't kidding. But we had so much learning to do. We didn't know anything about the business of beer, right? I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, but we didn't do beer. So there was that learning to do. And oh, fun fact, neither of us ever brewed before. So I sent him off to school to learn how to brew. He roped me into brewing a couple years later. And then of course, the Noah and Jonah at that time, they were curious, like, what's mom and dad doing now? And so they joined us a couple times in the garage. And we really had that light bulb moment, like, this could be something.
Well,
and who doesn't like fire?
if I remember in one of our earlier conversations, along that path, I can't imagine any obstacle or anything you couldn't learn, because I know with one of the boys who are young men, really the school was not able to meet his needs because of some of the very typical behavioral manifestations that come out of autism. And you decided, okay, I want my kid to, be in an environment where he feels safe and included and contribute. Oh, I'll just homeschool him. So, opening a brewery couldn't be any more difficult. Learning that.
Yeah, I am. So that might go back to a little bit of and also the kind of beers I brew. I like doing foraged beer, which a lot of people think is like really new and novel, but it really isn't. It's a very ancient practice before hops came on board. But I am really not afraid, and probably wired that when a challenge comes before me, I'm like, I'll figure it out. And I'm also going to figure it out in a way that I feel is beneficial, right? So I'm not just doing it to be like kind of rogue and do something different. It's because the thing that we were doing beforehand wasn't working. So, and you're speaking to, I did homeschool Noah for a brief period of time that we needed to. And then he came back on into the public school system because he was guiding the ship of he wanted to. So we were building that kind of model for him in the public school. And then Jonah is hyper sensory sensitive, extremely so. So an environment of a school environment, I mean, honestly, I don't think anybody could have done it how he needed it, just by the nature of a public school system. So we decided to do cyber charter because, it got pretty horrific for Jonah. He actually ended up being injured by a staff member. And he thought it was his fault. And it wasn't his fault. It's his wiring that he has.
Yeah.
So I couldn't have him start to, one, be afraid of learning. Nobody should be afraid of learning, right? It's supposed to be something that is intrinsic. It should get your curiosity flowing. It should be something that you look forward to doing, not something that you're terrified to do. So I knew I had to change that dynamic for him right away. So, and it took years. It took years of course correction for him. And now he's my guy who we started with, if you showed him a math problem, he would melt down. He would throw things across the table. He would sometimes hit you or spit at you. And now he's my guy who, well, he graduated from school just, as a regular student. And to this day, I'll be finding him looking stuff up, right? And digging into things that he's just interested in learning. And he is a voracious learner, so.
Super curious. I love the backstory, but really out of that lived experience in raising two boys that are now young men, and then figuring out at that transitional age, 21, when schooling ends, what is adult life going to look like? There's so much talent being left on the table. And we're all part of this movement for, equaling the playing field. And out of your lived experience, you've really created a business. Sure, in part, it's a family affair, but I know it extends way beyond that, that it's really a goal and a mission to offer employment to, persons living with a disability. And you've really created this very cohesive community, which is
employment
important.
and opportunities. Yeah, because there is such a significant unemployment rate and underemployment rate.
Yeah.
And even and some of the things that we just want to like shine a light on to affect positive change. Like I tell this story, this one is not of my sons, it's of another person, Gage, who comes here to the brewery occasionally to drink and with his family, have a beer, have a wine, and he's like a cruise ship director. He's super fun, but he's also incredibly artistically talented. Like he would bring a sketchbook with him, and he will show anybody his sketchbook. And as I'm looking through the sketchbook, my cogs start turning. I'm like, he's going to make a label for us. So I asked him to make a label for us. And I think the first label I paid him in cash, and the second one I paid with a check. And I was the one who commissioned it. And I took notice he didn't deposit the check. And I was like, I said, Gage, did you not deposit the check that I gave you? And he goes, no. And I'm like, why? And he said, well, because when I worked in school, they never paid me. So I feel bad about taking your money. And I had all kinds of feelings about that, because one of my things is people get paid here, period.
Yeah.
End of story. No more of this, quote unquote, volunteering. It's not voluntary if you are assigning a job to somebody to do. And that's not voluntary. They didn't raise their hand and say, hey, I want to do this, right? So Gage, yes, hey, he wanted to do this and do this label, but he's going to get paid because I asked him to make a label, and anybody who makes a label gets paid, and Gage should get paid too. So then I just said to Gage, I said, listen, you need to deposit that check, because if you don't deposit that check, I'm not going to ask you to make another label for me.
I love it. A little reverse psychology there.
Right?
I mean, man, what you're encouraging them is really to advocate. We always hear about the team and the supports that are advocating with the person with the serious illness or the disability. But what you're really doing is modeling and teaching, Gage how to advocate for himself. And I want to get into some of the nuts and bolts in terms of the business, because you've got some really cool features that makes it all inclusive. And not just, I want to be clear, we're not just talking about someone who's living with a disability. I'm sorry, somebody who's living, specifically with autism. There are many different things. So walk us through the brewery and what makes it a place for everyone.
I don't know if you can see in this picture right here, because that's Jonah standing next to Jeremy. Jeremy's one of our beer tenders. And actually they were doing some measuring of hops for a brew day for me. But if you can see behind them, we have our bar that has two different heights. And that was very intentional. So somebody who happens to use a wheelchair could actually choose to sit at the bar if they wanted to. And that was very, very important to me, because my mom had a friend who was, for all intents and purposes, a quadriplegic. Technically, on paper, she didn't meet the specs, but she was a quadriplegic. She used a wheelchair all the time. And she and her husband were very, very active before she had her spinal surgery that did not go well. And then they became not active, as active, because just places weren't accessible. So she was actually one of my muses, if you will. She's one of the reasons she came to our wedding. And she was like, no, I'll just stay in the back. And I'm like, oh, no, you are not staying in the back. So, but it was just how people who happen to need to use wheelchairs were often treated. Like, bring them in the back door, right? Sit them in the back. Kind of like in like the darkest little corner, right? Never have bathroom facilities that they can use, right? Almost never. And to me, that was just infuriating. So you wheel in our front door because you can. You can sit at the bar if you choose to. You can choose to sit wherever you want to. Our tables are accessible. We tried to make sure that the tap room has completely a level surface, and we also made wider doorways because even by ADA standards, the doorways they stink, right? The people using wheelchairs are like clunking, their knuckles against the wall to get through a doorway. So we make sure our doorways are even wider than what ADA asks. You can see that we have a bathroom that has a full-size changing table for an adult in there. So they don't have to leave fun just because they happen to have to use the bathroom or however that need is met for them. They and their caregiver can go in there, do what they need to do. There is no more laying your loved one on the floor or having to go out to your own car to do that toileting need. We have a bathroom that can meet that need. And that little room that you see that I'm actually sitting in right now is our sensory room up on the top left-hand corner. That's the outside of it. I wanted to make it look all. One of the things I wanted to show people is that you can do all these things in your space, whether it's your home or your business. You can do these things there and it can still look cool. See, that's Gracie. She uses, see little Gracie, she's second from the left. She used a wheelchair and her family brought her, oh my God, she was such a ride. Her family brought her there. I think Gracie at that time was 92. So I think she still holds the record for the oldest person who came to our brewery. And Gracie isn't with us anymore. So I was so happy to have had a chance to meet her. And she called me over and she says, hey, honey, your beer's pretty good, but do you have anything stronger?
I love it.
I'm like, I'm going to grow up to be you, Gracie.
Love it. Well, I think
that you can see we have, you can see we have noise canceling headphones for people if it gets a little too loud and ruckusy in here, or if they just feel more comfortable with it. And when our sensory room can be fully open, we have things like this, like where this little girl is playing. We have a bean bin, which is just a way that people can they're just really great for calming strategies as well as being fun. So we also, what I love is some families will ask us about some of the things we did and what it does and how it's helped Noah and Jonah. And then we get to have conversations about that, which is really kind of cool, like kind of just like paying it forward. Like there were parents who helped me and now we get to help other parents as well.
I think the pictures just capture the essence of what you've done in this small space in such a creative way and made it a place where,
I love that picture.
Love it. Any family can come and enjoy themselves outside of, the day-to-day challenges. And, this past year, we don't have time to go this angle in terms of the pandemic, but, kids who are living with disabilities have been very isolated. So I know you are doing everything in a COVID code and COVID friendly right now, but have great outdoor space. And we could just chat all day, but I really would love to get to just a couple words of wisdom, that comes from your journey through raising two sons to men, opening this business, making a gathering place for the community. What's your secret?
Here it is. Yeah. What's your passion? And that draw, right? Sometimes, especially with us parents, sometimes it can seem like it really gets lost when you get clocked with a softball, like to the noggin, that you weren't expecting. You'll get knocked off your feet for sure. But through it all, either you have a passion that you always wanted to pursue, or sometimes the passion finds you, right? So in my case, I feel very much like it's almost like a marrying of the two, but for real, the passion found me, right? The passion was I needed to learn about autism for my boys, right? So had you asked me when I was a teenager, would I be doing any of this stuff? Absolutely not. If you asked me when I was in my 20s and early parenting, the only thing I knew there was I was learning about autism, and I kind of knew that we were going to have to create something for Noah and Jonah. I had no idea what that was, right? At the same time, I was also learning how I could be a better parent and how I could help them learn, right?
I
But
love
through it
this
all,
one.
yeah, through it all, I think the thing that has helped us the most is being bold, is just going for it, right? So you can sit in your rocking chair and you can rock back and forth and you can wring your hands, and that'll keep you busy, but it won't get you anywhere, right? And you got to be bold. You got to make a decision, and sometimes that's the hardest thing. Not making a decision is also a decision. I suggest not doing that part. It's like I suggest you make a commitment to actually learn something, and know you are going to make mistakes. Like, and you're going to get hurt, and you're going to get dinged up, and you are going to have those times that you're crumpled in your shower floor sobbing, right? Because things are bad, right? Or you don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're doing. But through it all, you are piecing. You're piecing a story together, and it's leading you someplace. And you got to be bold to pursue it. So even when you're crumpled on that shower floor, do it and then get up, right? I say to people all the time, you can go into the gutter, you're not allowed to decorate it and stay there, right? And sometimes you need friends around you that will take the crowbar and pry you out, because we all need that, right? But keep going, keep pursuing it. And the thing is, you got to learn. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of learning. Like I said, the whole rocket thing, and don't run away from it, even when it gets hard. And the words on the paper are not exactly the words you might want to be reading at the time, right? You still got to do it and plug away at it, and do it in amounts that also keep you healthy, right? So you can't go so far all in that you are gonna like do some things like remortgage your house to pursue something that you're not quite sure of, right? If you're going to remortgage your house, you better make sure that you are all in and you have a plan.
Right. Well, that's why I love the last one, moving to
right?
the plan, either planning or repairing.
Have a plan, right? And that plan has got to move you towards that goal that you want. And some people are like, early on, they're like, well, I don't know what my goals are. And I said, here's the easiest way to get to them. What are you afraid of? Right? Yeah. I'm afraid of my son being alone and not having friends. Okay, well, let's address that. How are we going to do that? Right? I'm afraid of them, not being surrounded by a community that knows them. Okay, what can we do to address that? Those are your goals. It's the most awfulest way of getting to your goals, is saying, hey, what are you the most afraid of? But it is the quickest way of getting to your goals. Right?
Yeah, and I love the plan and the repairing. It just families out there that feel, stuck in really developing, the goal plan, moves them along that path. And it's not how many times you get knocked down, as you said. It's, how many times you get back up. And I don't want to give it all away. I should mention that Kelly is going to be joined by her husband Tom, and they're going to be part of our May 19th virtual event, Compassionate Communities Count. And I think it's the best way to kind of summarize our conversation today. What an inspiration, Kelly, Tom, Noah, and Jonah, and the whole philosophy behind Perkiomen Valley Brewery, where passion meets patience. So please save the date. And thank you for being patient with the Dolan Fund. We will have up no later than Saturday of this week. This is a free event, but there's going to be a small but mighty auction to bid on. So you'll be able to register for free, make a donation if you wish. All those materials will be up. Kelly, as I said, I could spend the day chatting, but truly, when I came across what a hidden gem of a business, and I know you're all about inclusion, but you're all about supporting other small businesses in terms of local entertainment and food trucks. So our hats off to you from the Dolan Fund. We look forward to seeing what's to come down the pike
Right.
in collaboration.
I would share one thing, that if there's anybody out there that is like entrepreneurial and a mom and pop or like a little cottage industry kind of thing, we also have First Saturday Market. So if you're interested in setting up your wares at that, just send me an email, kelly@perkiomenvalleybrewery.com, because one of our goals is for people like our families to actually have an opportunity to do stuff with their kiddos as well. And we would love to get you in there in the
That's
mix.
awesome. That's incredible. I look forward to coming out. Thanks for spending some time with us today. We look forward to hearing more from you at the event in May.
Thank you. I can't
Thanks,
wait.
Kelly. Have
All
an
right.
awesome day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Oh, sorry. Next week, one of our wonderful partners that we've worked for many years, Sebastian Riding Company, that's doing all sorts of incredible things for children and adults who are living with disabilities. So please join us, same time next Thursday, 11